In the heart of the African savannah, where the sun kisses the horizon and the winds whisper ancient stories, there lies a secret known only to the bravest, a story of survival, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between man and beast. It was the height of the dry season, and the plains of southern Africa stretched endlessly, cracked with the thirst of a land longing for rain. The air was thick with dust, and the once proud herds moved sluggishly across the yellow grass in search of food. Among them was an old, majestic lion. He was once called a silent king, a lion whose roar could send even the mightiest buffalo into retreat. But now, age had weighed heavily on his body. His golden mane, once a symbol of strength, had withered into pale strands. His walk, once a stride of dominance, had become slow, and his hunting days seemed long behind him. What no one knew was that today the silent king would find himself in a fight for his life, and two unexpected heroes would rise to meet him. Foreboding tone on the outskirts of Savannah, not far from the old lion's territory, two farmers worked tirelessly in the scorching heat. Thabo and Mosi were brothers, sons of the soil, who had grown up on this land. They understood the rhythm of the wild, and had seen lions from afar many times. But today, they would get closer than they ever imagined. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, a deep, guttural sound echoed through the plains. It was faint at first, almost drowned out by the wind and the rustling of leaves. But then it grew louder, more desperate. It wasn't the sound of a lion hunting or calling to its pride. No, this was different. This was a cry for help. Thabo paused, his ears perking up. "Mosi, do you hear that?" Mosi wiped the sweat from his brow and listened carefully. "It's coming from the direction of the river," he said. The brothers exchanged glances. Something was wrong, and they both knew it. Leaving their tools behind, they sprinted toward the sound. As they neared the riverbank, the scene unfolded before their eyes. There, half buried in the thick, unforgiving mud, was a silent king. His once majestic frame now lay in the murky waters, struggling to free himself from the grip of the swampy pit. His body was exhausted, his roars weaker now, as he thrashed in desperation. The mud had claimed him, pulling him deeper with every movement. The lion's eyes flickered with fear, something Thabo had never seen in such a powerful creature before. For a moment, the brothers stood frozen. This was no ordinary lion. This was a legend of the plains. The stories of his strength and dominance were known far and wide. And now, here he was on the brink of death, but there was no time to hesitate. Thabo and Mosi knew that if they didn't act now, the lion would soon be lost to the river. Without a second thought, Thabo reached into his bag and pulled out a length of rope. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. "We need to get close, Mosi. We don't have a choice." Mosi nodded, his heart racing. They both knew the risks of getting too close to a wounded animal, especially a lion. But something deeper drove them. Perhaps it was the respect they had for this creature, or perhaps it was the silent understanding that no one deserves to die alone. Slowly, they approached the pit, careful not to make sudden movements. Thabo could see the lion's chest rising and falling rapidly, its breath labored. They were close enough now to hear the faint growls rumbling in its throat. Thabo lowered the rope, trying to loop it around the lion's chest. The first attempt failed. The lion flinched, its massive paws swiping at the air. Thabo pulled back quickly, heart pounding, but he knew they couldn't give up. With a deep breath, they tried again, this time with more success. The rope slid beneath the lion's belly, and with all their might, the two brothers began to pull. Every inch was a battle. The mud clung to the lion's fur, refusing to let go. The rope strained under the weight, and the brothers' muscles burned as they pulled with all their strength. The lion let out a final, guttural roar, part exhaustion, part defiance. The sun beat down on them, their faces slick with sweat and determination. The mud splattered as they dug their feet into the ground, refusing to be defeated. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the lion's massive body was finally free from the pit. He lay on the bank, covered in mud and breathing heavily, but alive. The air was still. The only sound was the soft trickling of the river and the labored breathing of the old lion. Thabo and Mosi stood frozen, not daring to move. The silent king slowly lifted his head, his amber eyes locking with theirs. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. There was no fear, no anger, only a shared understanding. The lion, once the fiercest predator of the plains, had been saved by two humble farmers. And in that moment, the barrier between man and beast was broken. The lion rose to his feet, his legs trembling but strong enough to stand. He looked back at the river, then at the two men who had risked their lives to save him. And then, with a slow, deliberate step, he began to walk away. But just as the lion disappeared into the tall grass, a low, menacing growl echoed from the trees behind them. Tabo and Mosi turned slowly, their eyes widening in fear. There, standing at the edge of the clearing, was the mother lion, the mate of the silent king. Her eyes burned with fury, her muscles coiled to strike. She had seen everything, and in her eyes, these men were still a threat. The brothers stood frozen, their hearts racing. They had saved one lion, but now they faced the wrath of another. Tabo raised his hand slowly, speaking in a soft, calming voice. "We mean no harm," he whispered, hoping the lioness would understand. The lioness took a step forward, her growls growing louder. But then, something remarkable happened. The silent king appeared from the grass and stood between the men and his mate. He looked back at her, his expression calm but firm, and slowly, the lioness's growls subsided. She glanced at the two men, then back at her mate. The tension hung thick in the air, but after a moment, the lioness turned and followed the silent king into the safety of the tall grass. Tabo and Mosi stood in stunned silence, their bodies trembling with adrenaline. They had come face to face with death, but in the end, it was compassion and understanding that had saved them. The story of the silent king and the two brave farmers spread across the plains. It became a legend told around campfires, a tale of courage, respect, and the unspoken bond between man and beast. Tabo and Mosi returned to their farm that evening, their hearts full of gratitude for the life they had saved and the life they had been spared. And as the sun set over the African savannah, the silent king roamed once more, his pride restored, his legacy forever sealed.